Welcome back, everybody, in another deep dive. You know, we love getting into some pretty dense source material here. And today we're going deep on some lesser-known details about the JFK assassination.
Always a fascinating topic.
Right. And with me to dig into these accounts, we have an expert in information analysis.
Happy to be here.
So, Bill Newman.
Oh, yeah.
He was incredibly close to the assassination.
His account really shows how chaotic that day was. You know how we see things play out so neatly in the Zapruder film? Well, that's not how it felt for those actually there. Newman initially thought the first shots were firecrackers. Only when he saw President Kennedy react did he realize what was happening.
And as the motorcade approached, he saw the blood on Governor Connally, the panic on Jackie Kennedy's face.
It's a powerful account.
Then there's the third shot.
Yeah, the sight of JFK's head blow off. You can just imagine the fear.
It makes you think about how people must have reacted.
The instinct to protect your loved ones, that immediate danger.
Newman was adamant the shots came from behind him, over his head.
Which, of course, clashes with the popular interpretation of the Zapruder film.
Exactly. Like, is there something we're missing about the film?
Right. Or maybe about how people remember that day.
And then there's this detail Newman mentions. The limousine momentarily stopping after the third shot.
That's not something you hear a lot about.
It's not clear in the Zapruder film, either. Do you think the chaos could have distorted people's memories?
It's certainly possible.
Or is there more to this detail, something we haven't considered?
That's what makes the JFK assassination so compelling, these little details that don't quite fit.
Okay, so we have Newman's account raising all sorts of questions.
Okay.
Let's move on to another intriguing piece of this puzzle. The murder of Officer J.D. Tippit.
Oh, this is a good one.
There's this article called Tippit After the Murder that really digs into the immediate aftermath.
The way things unfolded after Tippit's death unintentionally fueled a lot of those conspiracy theories.
Like the lack of photos of Tippit's body at the crime scene.
Exactly. Which actually has a pretty simple explanation. See, the ambulance got there before the police.
Wow.
Yeah, so they took Tippit straight to the hospital. No time for photos.
Makes sense in that situation.
But then you have Eddie Kinsley.
The ambulance attendant.
Yeah, he remembers seeing a man running near the scene.
That could be anyone, right? But on a day like that...
It makes you wonder if he saw the assassin fleeing. But there's a problem. Kinsley's description doesn't match Oswald at all.
Oh, so we have a potential witness to the Tippit shooting, but the description's off.
And to make it even more confusing, he remembers the man running in the opposite direction from where Oswald was eventually arrested.
So was it just someone else entirely?
Yeah.
Just reacting to the news of the assassination?
It's definitely possible. In all that chaos, mistaken identity wouldn't be surprising.
It reminds us that even eyewitness accounts, as powerful as they can be, are not perfect.
They're shaped by perception, by memory, by the emotions of the moment.
You ready for another twist?
Hit me with it.
Chauncey Holt, one of the three tramps seen near Dealey Plaza.
Oh, yeah. Holt's story is a wild one.
We have this article summarizing some correspondence with him from before he died.
What's interesting is this connection to a weapons modification plant that experimented with Mannlicher Carcano rifles.
The same type of rifle used in the assassination.
Right. And Holt claims he was delivering fake IDs in Dealey Plaza as part of this plan to stage an incident.
And that this would be blamed on pro-Castro Cubans.
It's a big claim.
He even drew a detailed map of Dealey Plaza, marked all these suspicious figures he supposedly saw.
We have to be careful with Holt's claims, though.
How so?
A lot of what he says lacks corroboration. Sometimes he contradicts himself, and some of his claims, well, they just haven't been verified by other sources.
So we have this potentially unreliable narrator making some pretty big accusations.
It's definitely a challenge. I think the best way to look at it is Holt's account is one piece of the puzzle, but not necessarily the key to solving it.
Makes sense. We can't just dismiss him outright.
Yeah. But we can't take everything he says at face value either.
We need to compare his claims to other evidence, look for patterns, decide how much weight his testimony actually carries.
Exactly. That's what makes the JFK assassination so fascinating and so frustrating.
It's this puzzle with missing pieces, unreliable narrators, twists and turns everywhere you look.
Exactly. But that's what keeps researchers coming back, trying to separate truth from fiction.
Before we get too lost down that rabbit hole, I want to take a minute to acknowledge two figures who dedicated themselves to uncovering the truth about the assassination. A.J. Buck Ferrell and Penn Jones Jr. Very different approaches, but both driven by that same desire for the truth.
It's so important to recognize their work. They challenged the official narrative, inspired so many others to question and investigate.
There's this great tribute to Buck Ferrell. He was like the royal gatekeeper, supporting his wife, Mary Ferrell, who's a legend in JFK research.
He sounds like he provided that stability amidst all the chaos.
And then you have Penn Jones Jr. He was a force. Challenged the official narrative through his newspaper, the Midlothian Mirror, and his Forgive My Grief books.
He was relentless, interviewing witnesses, digging up documents, publishing his findings.
Often contradicting the Warren Commission.
Absolutely. And it's amazing that he balanced all this groundbreaking research with everyday news, like garden club meetings and high school sports.
He was the ultimate citizen journalist, committed to transparency and accountability.
And his courage. He faced threats, attempts to discredit him, but he never stopped.
His dedication to justice for JFK is inspiring.
And his legacy lives on. He showed that you don't need fancy credentials to challenge powerful institutions.
All you need is a passion for the truth.
And the willingness to speak truth to power, that's something we need more of, especially today.
So let's recap. We've heard an eyewitness account that challenges the accepted narrative, explored the strange circumstances of Officer Tippett's murder,
and tried to make sense of Chauncey Holt and his claims.
Right. And of course, we can't forget those who paved the way for continued research.
We've seen how insightful, but also how problematic eyewitness accounts can be.
How seemingly straightforward events can become so ambiguous.
And the immense dedication it takes to uncover the truth.
But that's just the tip of the iceberg. We have even more to discuss, more connections to uncover.
As we try to untangle this complex and captivating puzzle, it's about to get even more interesting. You know, there's this set of photos taken just 4 days before Dallas. JFK in Tampa, Florida. Crowds, handshakes, smiles.
But those smiles probably hit a lot of tension.
Right. Like, even in those carefree moments, the weight of the presidency is there. The scrutiny, the threats, and knowing what happened just days later, it's eerie.
Foreshadowing, almost.
It really makes you think about the importance of context, how every detail takes on a new meaning.
Like those missing photos of Officer Tippett's body.
Yeah, that lack of information really fueled the conspiracy theories.
People crave certainty, answers. And when they're not there,
they come up with their own...
So we have this high-profile assassination, shrouded in mystery.
Unanswered questions. Lack of transparency.
And then there's the missing chalk outline of Tippett's body.
Yeah.
Not standard procedure back then, I know.
But still, the absence of it, without a clear explanation, just adds to the suspicion.
Like something was being hidden.
Right, like the crime scene wasn't properly documented.
And then we find out that Bill Newman, who was so close to the shooting, never even testified before the Warren Commission.
It's strange, isn't it? Could be an oversight, I guess.
But given how close he was, how clearly he remembered everything.
It seems like his account should have been crucial.
Maybe they thought they had enough eyewitness testimony already.
Maybe. But it just adds to that sense of doubt surrounding the Warren Commission's findings.
Like they were picking and choosing evidence to fit their narrative.
Focusing on the lone gunman theory and ignoring anything that challenged it.
And Newman mentioned being held for hours with other witnesses at the Dallas Sheriff's Department. He remembers this one guy who was really nervous.
The one who was supposed to be catching a plane, wearing a hat. Rumored to have a criminal past?
That's him. Turns out he was Jim Braden. He pops up in a lot of conspiracy theories.
What was he doing there?
Right. Was it just a coincidence?
Or was he involved somehow?
Another unanswered question that keeps researchers digging.
Speaking of digging, let's go back to Chauncey Holt. He made all those claims about a network of people involved in the assassination.
Names, agencies, locations, even that weapons modification plant.
Where they tested Mannlicher Carcano rifles?
Holt claims he met with these people, delivered fake IDs, witnessed all these suspicious activities in Dealey Plaza.
But remember, a lot of what he says is uncorroborated.
Right, it's his word against the official record.
We have to be skeptical. Could be embellishment, misremembering, even fabrication.
Holt himself wasn't exactly the most reliable source.
No, he wasn't. Working in that world of espionage, weapon modifications, fake IDs.
What if we look at his claims not as literal truths, but as pieces of a puzzle?
I like that. Looking for patterns, connections, trying to understand the motivations, the power dynamics at play.
Maybe that can lead us to more concrete evidence.
It's like using a flashlight in a dark room.
Okay, I like that.
Holt's claims might not illuminate everything, but they could help us find the light switch.
Even unreliable sources can offer clues.
It's about sifting through the noise to find the signal.
Okay, so let's focus on one specific person Holt mentioned. Aldo Vera Serafin. Supposedly at Dealey Plaza that day.
Holt called him a world-class terrorist, a CIA contract agent, maybe even a double-crosser.
He was supposedly in a car near a parking lot entrance.
Communicating with someone via transceiver?
Was he involved in the assassination? Or just observing?
And if he was involved, whose side was he on? The conspirators are trying to stop them?
In that world of double agents and hidden agendas, who knows?
It's like trying to untangle a spider web.
And then there's Ramon Echevarria. Holt claimed he received Secret Service recognition pins and credentials the morning of the assassination.
In a parking lot, no less.
And that these were the credentials used by those suspicious figures near the grassy knoll and the Texas Schoolbook Depository.
Fake Secret Service credentials. That changes things.
It suggests a level of planning that goes beyond a lone gunman.
Someone wanted to infiltrate security, maybe to help with the assassination or control the scene afterwards.
But who was Echevarria? Why would he be involved?
Holt claimed he was connected to Paulino Sierra Martinez, an anti-Castro Cuban exile who hated Kennedy.
So there's a potential motive, anti-Castro sentiment?
If Echevarria was working with Sierra, it suggests the assassination could have been driven by a desire to get rid of Kennedy because of his stance on Cuba.
And it gets even more complicated. Holt claimed that Robert Kennedy was actually supporting Sierra's organization.
Whoa, if that's true.
Elements within the Kennedy administration working against JFK.
Like a Shakespearean tragedy.
Brother against brother. Hidden agendas. Power struggles.
A reminder that even within a family, there can be deep divisions.
So we have Vera, Echevarria, Sierra, even Robert Kennedy potentially involved. There's a lot to unpack.
Right. And remember, these are just allegations. We need to be careful. But they raise some very interesting questions.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
And every layer is more complex than the last.
It makes you wonder what else is hidden, just waiting to be discovered.
Let's talk about the 3006 Sabot found on the roof of the Dallas County Records building.
I feel like not enough people talk about this.
It raises some serious questions about the weapons used in the assassination.
Can you explain what a sabot is again?
Sure. It's basically a device used to fire a projectile that's smaller than the bore of the weapon.
Like a sleeve.
Exactly. It lets you fire a smaller bullet from a larger gun.
And why is this important for the JFK assassination?
Because the rifle Oswald supposedly used was a 6.5 millimeter. But a 3006 Sabot means a larger caliber weapon was fired.
So Oswald wasn't the only shooter.
It definitely points to multiple shooters, multiple weapons, which completely contradicts the lone gunman theory.
Could this 3006 Sabot be connected to that weapons modification plant Holt talked about?
It's possible. If Holt's telling the truth about those weapons tests and modifications, this Sabot could have been part of their arsenal.
And somehow ended up on the roof of the records building.
Right. It raises all sorts of questions. Who were these people? What were they doing?
How high up did this go?
The questions that keep researchers coming back.
Holt also claimed they were experimenting with loading .263 caliber Weatherby ammunition into Mannlicher Carcano cases.
Oh yeah, that's a crucial detail. That combination would make it almost impossible to match bullets found at the scene to the murder weapon.
Creating a forensic smokescreen?
It seems that way. This level of planning really points to a more coordinated operation.
Intentionally covering their tracks.
Every detail planned in advance, even how to mess with the forensic analysis.
It makes you wonder what else they might have done to manipulate the evidence.
What other layers are still hidden out there?
We talk about that lack of transparency feeding into conspiracy theories. Like, what happened to Officer Tippett's body?
Yeah, the whole missing hour thing.
Some people believe Tippett's body was missing for a full hour.
And that during that time, it was switched with President Kennedy's body.
As part of a huge cover-up.
It's a pretty out there theory. It assumes the two bodies were even close to each other at Parkland.
But were they?
Not at all. The hearse with Kennedy's body left for Love Field at 2:08 p.m., and we know from multiple witnesses that Tippett's body was still at Methodist Hospital at that time.
So they were never even in the same place.
Nope. The timeline just doesn't add up.
It shows how important those timelines are, those documented movements.
Right. They provide a factual counterpoint to some of those wilder theories.
It's a good reminder that while it's important to question the official narrative,
we also need to ground our analysis in facts and evidence.
Okay, last thing. There's this alleged reunion of people involved in the assassination.
Supposedly took place in Houston in November 1970.
Some say it was a meeting to silence witnesses.
Or even plan future operations.
Sounds pretty dramatic.
But like a lot of things in this case, the evidence is shaky at best.
So no proof.
No confirmed accounts, no documentation, just rumors and speculation.
Another unanswered question. Did this reunion happen? And if it did, why?
It might be a piece of the puzzle we never solve.
But it shows how the JFK assassination still captivates us. All those unanswered questions, the whispers of conspiracies, the pursuit of truth.
That's a good way to put it. We've examined eyewitness accounts, looked at evidence.
Some of it more reliable than others.
We've grappled with claims that are both intriguing and questionable.
And we've talked about how speculation can take over when there are gaps in information.
Right. But it's crucial to approach this case with critical thinking. Be skeptical, but also be open to different possibilities.
The JFK assassination is more than just a historical event. It's a symbol, I think.
Of what?
Of our fascination with conspiracies, our need to understand tragedy, our search for the truth, even when it's hard to find.
And maybe that's the real lesson here. The JFK assassination, it's not just about finding a smoking gun.
It's about the bigger picture, the power, the ambition, the ideology that shaped the world back then.
What if the answers aren't in Dealey Plaza, but in the halls of power?
In the minds of those who wanted to change the course of history.
Keep asking questions. Keep investigating.
You might just find those answers.
And who knows what else you might discover along the way.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the JFK assassination. Until next time, stay curious.